And welcome to the Writer's Life, the place where you get the sights, sounds, smells, tastes of my particular writer's life. Excuse me. Where you get the truth. Something you're not going to get in Washington, D.C. Take two. Hit subscribe. Punch the bell for notifications. No, tap the bell for notifications. And boy, did I just screw that up, Dan. Anyway, you get what I'm talking about here. I'm doing I'm multitasking.
There you go.
It's Black Friday. Go to vinsandry.com. Vinsandry.com. My course is half price right now, probably for the weekend. You can get Chase Baker and the Golden Condor. It's a bargain booksy today for just 99 cents. So go nuts. Escape for the weekend. Forget about the relatives who ruined your day yesterday at Thanksgiving. Anyway, I don't mean to be a cynic. Anyway, I'm happy to introduce Dan Baldwin, all the way from, I don't know what part of Arizona you live in, Dan, but
Mesa, Arizona, Valley of the Sun.
Valley of the Sun. And Dan has written 1 million books. You've ghostwritten 1 million books, and you have a bunch of mysteries, a bunch of westerns, some mysteries, and some other stuff. And I believe you are into the independent publishing. Is that true?
Primarily, I publish. Occasionally, I will publish traditionally, but that 9 times out of 10, I go independent.
So is it fair to say you're like a hybrid guy, like I am?
Well, if you want to classify me, I would go indie. I would go indie more than anything else.
Yeah, I'm pushing.
Yeah.
I'm going that way too.
Yeah, no, it's when I go traditional, it's for very, very specific, usually marketing purposes.
Right. I hear you. I just find that I've been on this crusade for getting my books back. And I just got from one publisher, after me having a knockdown drag out with the owner, I just got back 2 major standalones, and they were just languishing, right? And already I just got them back. I just got my letter 3 days ago, and already one of them will be published next week, and we'll get it, moving again, because these people don't give a shit, as you know.
Not a bit. No, well, one of the reasons I like indie so much is the fact that the artist has control over the artist's work.
I like it that way. Me too. I agree with
you have to do you have to do a lot more work, but you have a lot more control. I think that's to me that's more important.
And you own your own IP. I think that is so important.
Exactly.
Yep. Tell me about the wall behind you. It is just amazing. You have this eclectic assortment of things that are framed. I see the bookshelf for sure, but
probably the most important thing is my Boy Scout Eagle badge, which is up right over here.
Oh, awesome!
And I have I have a bunch of awards mounted on the wall, and then I have different photographs of myself and other people, and some artwork and some work. Let's see, this one here is a friend of mine did a painting of me with my Colt 45. A little bit of like me, it's a little bit of everything.
Is that your preferred sidearm, Colt 45?
Actually, I've got a nice little 357 Ruger that I like.
You're dead serious. What do I have?
I do a lot of hiking and
I've got the 1911.
I've got a 1911, but it's a 22. It's a fun little gun.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
You can shoot gophers with that.
I do a lot of hiking and camping by myself, and
you got to bring it.
Out here, you're crazy if you don't go out armed.
Oh, you have to, yeah. In fact, I don't mean to talk right over it, but my initial license was they were like, you can carry when you're hiking and fishing and in the woods and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, especially when those bears come up on you.
I've met a few bears in my time, but mostly they'll run away from me. It's the human animal you need to be mostly concerned about around here.
Absolutely. How far away are you from the border?
Oh, probably 100 miles, give or take.
Right. But are you seeing
around here
the problem?
Yeah, there's no border. I mean, I've walked out hiking by myself. I walked on dump sites where there, just hundreds and hundreds of backpacks and empty water bottles and blankets and shirts and hoodies. I've done that numerous times, just walking in the desert.
Right.
So,
That's just crazy.
yeah, my idea is just to I carry a weapon so that ideally I don't have to use it. Just show it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. And it's funny because even up here in New York State, I rarely carry. I'll put it in my Jeep in the glove box because it's heavy. And it's people like glamorize it. Like in our books and on TV and in movies and stuff like that. But to be honest, like carrying your pistol, it's a pain in the ass. It's heavy. It's cumbersome.
Try carrying a pistol with a backpack. It gets old fast.
It does. It gets old real fast. And but I carried it during that whole summer of the George Floyd riots because there was no law. And I was even dating at the time, I think she was a major in the New York State Troopers, and she's like, make sure you carry, when you go out. And she was the first one to say it, because she's like, the law is not going to help you. They've been ordered to stand down, and that was it. They wanted this trouble, so and they got it.
Yeah, I was out doing a search and rescue, or at this time it was search and recovery mission, and out on a trail by myself. I was part of a team, but I was on a trail by myself, and I ran into this big mountain man looking guy with a machete, just going.
Oh, jeez.
And I had at the time I had a Glock, so I just turned, and positioned myself so that he could see I was carrying, and he and faded into the sunset.
Oh my God!
But
so what kind of search and rescue mission? What tell me about that?
Well, if I'm what they call a psychic detective, psychic investigator. I've written one of the areas I write in is paranormal nonfiction.
That's right.
And
okay.
Yeah, and I've done a great deal of work. I'm a pendulum dowser, and I've done a great little work using dowsing techniques and finding missing persons. And when I was doing that, there was search and rescue groups or search and recovery groups would go out looking for the missing person. And I volunteered to go out with them as they call it a ground pounder.
Right.
So just another body to cover territory.
And how successful have you been at that?
I would say fair. Yeah, we found a lot of people. Mostly, of course, by the time we get called in, it's the person is deceased. But we've got a pretty good record.
When you're hot on a trail,
yeah,
do you start getting like a feeling, or do you start?
No, I don't. I'm not a medium. Now I have worked with mediums. In fact, I've written a couple of books on combining pendulum dowsing with mediumship, investigating ghost towns and things like that in Arizona. But I can't see dead people.
Right.
I use the pendulum, and every once in a while I will get a reading, a personal reading, like an emotional reading. But primarily, I don't have that skill. I call myself in my books a psychic on training wheels.
All right, I'm gonna have to check that out, and I encourage the audience to check that out. Now, when you can you describe this pendulum?
Yeah, let me be rude.
Oh, awesome.
But I'm sure everyone in your audience is familiar with the old guy out in the woods with the witching stick, the old rod, looking for water.
Yep.
And when you're over the water or the gold or whatever, the rod turns down. Well, I use a pendulum, and it's the same thing. It's just a different technique. And what happens is your conscious mind looks at the pendulum, frees up your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind connects with the out there, and you just ask questions, and you ask yes or no questions. Is the missing person in Arizona? Yes. Is the missing person in northern Arizona? Is the missing person on Highway 260? Yes or no? And through a process of elimination, you in the case of looking for a missing person, you basically just squeeze down your area of research so that you can get on, use topographical maps or even Google Earth and get down to, square footage.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, one of the problems the authorities have with psychics is that they can give a perfectly good description of the location, but if you don't know where that location is, it does you absolutely no good whatsoever, and that happens a lot. With the pendulum dowsing, if you work it long enough, you can get latitude and longitude.
It's that specific.
It's that specific.
Wow.
Yeah, I've gotten street addresses before.
Really?
But
Oh my God.
it's just a matter of elimination. And don't get me wrong, I don't claim to be 100% right.
Right.
It's hit or miss, mostly hit, but every once in a while you'll swing and miss. But yeah, you can get down to, like I said, you can get down to street addresses.
Wow. And the police or the troopers or who invites you out on these missions?
Primarily the police or the FBI or the Forest Service, or I've worked in, let's see, Italy, France, England,
Wow.
Ireland, Mexico, Canada, and the United States, primarily in the United States. If a family contacts me or the people I work with, we contact the authorities and let them know we're working on the case and make sure we're not stepping on any toes. And at that point, we work directly with the authorities and not the family.
I'm curious about Italy because I spend a lot of time there. You didn't happen to work on the Monster of Florence?
Oh no, I worked the case I remember was a missing like a 9-month-old baby.
Tell me about that.
Well, there's not much to tell. I mean, as soon as we got involved, it was like the baby's gone.
Right.
Yeah, there was no investigation. When I did my my pendulum work, one of the few times I had an emotional response, but I said, is the baby alive? And I just broke out crying.
Right.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
So
Extremely emotional. Have you thought about maybe putting all this into like a television script? Teleplay?
Yeah, I've thought about it, but nothing's ever clicked for me. When I write something, it's got to click.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand.
I imagine I will someday, but just so far I haven't had that itch to scratch.
Right. Maybe you're just too close to the subject.
That is true. It gets very emotional.
Right. I would imagine it does.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating now.
Yeah.
Now, like, could you transfer these talents into, say, something like in the green room? We happen to mention the Kennedy assassination. Could you transfer those talents into, say, a historical murder, and sort of like if you were to go to Dealey tomorrow, back to Dealey, could you like sort of like using these methods sort of reconstruct what really happened?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, there's no reason not to.
Interesting. Because I believe there was, I was going to say conspiracy, but I mean, I don't believe Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman, nor do I even think he got a shot off. I think he was in the lunchroom the whole time.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, they're witnesses. Yeah, Oswald was not in the sniper's nest at the time of the shooting. That is a documented fact.
That is the truth.
Anybody who doubts that just needs to look up the documents. He was down on the first floor, then the second floor, then the first floor during the shooting.
Right.
Yeah. I've written 3 books about Jack Ruby, so I've done a little bit of research into the area.
Tell me about Jack Ruby.
He's not the simple dirty club owner that people think of, that the story's been portrayed. He was basically the drug connection for Dallas. He moved in 1947 from Chicago to Dallas to run the drug operation in Dallas. That was reported by a sheriff. I believe his name was Guthrie in 1947. It was that early. He was also very involved in running guns and material to Cuba. He was at the same time an FBI informant. You don't hear much about that, but he was definitely an FBI informant. Met at least 9 times with Agent, I believe it was Flynn was the agent's name. And he was probably also an informant for the Dallas PD.
Right.
So.
Certainly he entertained it Dallas PD an awful lot in his
Oh
clubs.
yeah, the Carousel Club. Again, depends on what books you read, but he knew and was very familiar with a phenomenally large number of the members of the Dallas Police Force. That's fact. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so Lee Harvey Oswald's in the lunchroom. He hears a commotion. He thinks everything's. Suddenly, he realizes, "Holy crap! I'm going to be set up as the patsy." He takes off. Perhaps even I don't know if he shoots Tibbetts or not, or whatever the cop.
No.
But he passed the paraffin test, so I don't know. And then I'm assuming that maybe Ruby was, like set to, was entrusted to do away with him ahead of time.
I don't know about ahead of time. I personally, again, this is my opinion. I think when Oswald went to the Texas Theater, I think he was going there to meet somebody, because he was at the Texas Theater, and again, there are witnesses who swear to this. At the same time Tippett was shot, Oswald was already in the Texas Theater.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he went there to meet somebody, because when he went in, he would go down and sit next to somebody, get up, move down, sit next to somebody else, get up, move down, sit next to somebody else. I think the purpose of getting him to the Texas Theater was to get him. That was where he was going to be killed. And let me jump in real quick. Since we're on the subject, if your audience wants to look it up, there were 2 arrests at the Texas Theater. One came out the front door, one came out the back door. Documented. You can look up the documents.
Okay, now who was arrested?
The second Oswald. There were 2 Lee Harvey Oswalds in Dallas and Fort Worth from at least September to November 22nd.
Now, when you say 2 Lee Harvey Oswalds, you mean they looked alike? They doubles?
Yeah, looked close enough alike that he would fool people who didn't know him. But yeah, clearly there were. Again, this in one of my books, Sparky and the Twins, takes on that. It's a fiction book, but I use a lot of documented material, and there are record after record after record after record of Oswald being at the depository while he's also someplace else. Witnessed by honest, just basic folks, good people who had a good chance to look at him. Again, over and over and over and over again. He was being set up at least from September on.
Wow, this blows my mind, because this is something, all the years I've been studying this, I have never heard. Is it conceivable that one of the Lee Harvey Oswalds lived to tell the tale?
Well, one of them did. Yeah, they were both in the depository. Lee Oswald, let's call it Harvey Oswald, came out the front door. That's the one we know. Lee Oswald came out and ran down the hill and jumped into a white Rambler station wagon. He was observed by deputy sheriff.
And he got away? He
got away, yeah.
And do you believe he was one of the
deputy sheriff was Roger Craig. He was deputy sheriff of the year. I mean, really, straight arrow type guy. But after we'll call him Harvey, went out the front door, caught a taxi, caught a bus, caught a taxi. A few minutes later, Lee Oswald came down and ran down the grassy knoll and jumped into the white Rambler station wagon, and that was observed by at least 4 people.
Wow, this I did not know.
Yeah, one of the things in my Ruby books, they're all 3 fiction, but I have an appendix. So when I say that there's an Oswald double at such and such a place, I've got a notation where you can go to the official record and check that out.
Okay. And these guys were working for the CIA, no question.
That's my opinion. Is the CIA was the operational arm of the.
I believe it too.
Yeah.
Do you think Johnson was aware of it? Johnson signed off along with Dulles?
Yeah, I don't think he instituted it. I think he was aware of it. That's personal opinion, but I think he was aware of it.
In general, it's probably a good idea not to keep him too informed, so that he has plausible deniability, I would assume.
Also, Johnson was something of a nutburger.
He was.
He was a very unstable individual. So you don't want to trust him with too much. There's an interesting thing about that. A lot of people think the part of the assassination was due to Kennedy's pulling out of Vietnam. And that was in a document called National Security Action Memorandum 263, which basically said we're pulling out. There's a National Action Memorandum 273, which says we're going back in. All right, 273 was Johnson's.
Right.
That was Johnson's. Interestingly enough, they found a document that document was drawn up on November 21st, 1963, before the shooting.
I had heard that it was drawn up
Yeah.
before and actually executed, within
2
hours.
days later, 24th, yeah. But
Okay,
it was drawn
24
up by,
hours.
I believe it was McGeorge or William, one of the Bundy brothers.
Right.
But the document completely reversing Kennedy's policy was drawn up the day before he was killed,
Right.
which is rather interesting.
Yeah. The military-industrial complex. This is fascinating. I had no idea there were two Lee Harvey Oswalds like that.
Yeah, and again, I tell people, I make presentations all the time. And I tell people, everything I'm telling you is documented. You can look it up if you're willing to put in the time to find the original documents.
Right. Now, did one of the Oswalds, one of the twins, one of the Oswalds, was one of them a shooter? Or no? Were they just completely goats?
The Lee Oswald that we know was not a shooter. That's established fact. The other one, he may have been. I don't know. He was definitely in the depository. Now,
Definitely
whether he was there,
definitely three shooters.
There were multiple shooters, no doubt about it.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
And boy, were they good. I mean, other than Conley, who I'm sure they didn't care about, there was no collateral damage. I mean, look how close Jackie was. Look how close Lady Bird was. They were excellent marksmen.
Yeah. Can you imagine what would happen if Jackie had been hit?
Oh, boy.
Can you imagine the outcry?
Yep. The Secret Service were right there on top of it, but they managed to nail their targets perfectly. Moving car, and I've been there, it's a little twisty, whatever. Not an easy, not such an easy.
Yes, an escort violates Secret Service rules.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't do that. If you look at the documentation, when the shooting started, the car slowed down to a near stop.
That's right. When they made that turn.
No, after they made the turn, going down Elm Street.
Okay.
When the shooting started, the brakes are applied. You can see the brake lights come on, and there are multiple witnesses who said the car came to a near stop during the shooting.
Now, is this when? Now I'm talking from the point of view of the Zapruder film. Is this when they go when the street sign blocks our view of him, and he comes and there's the umbrella man, and Jack comes out grasping his neck.
Yeah.
That's the time you're talking about?
Yeah. Again, it's in the Nix film, and you can notice it in the Nix film and the Zapruder film. And there are multiple witnesses, I think a dozen, 2 dozen, something like that, who reported the same thing, that the car came to a near stop. And if you look in the records, Clint Hill is the only Secret Service agent that reacted. Well, Hill was assigned to Jackie Kennedy.
Right.
He wasn't assigned to the president. The other agents stayed in the vehicle, the follow-up vehicle. They were ordered to stand down.
Right. Clint Hill believes that it was Lee Harvey Oswald all the way from the school book depository building.
Yeah.
At least that, I think I'm going to stick with the story. I'm going to stick with the Warren Commission.
I think a lot of people did that because, what are you going to do? They just wiped out the most powerful man in the United States. Do I stand in the way?
Right. Which leads me to another question.
Yeah.
Well, no, go ahead. You finish your
No,
thought.
just saying it's a matter. If you want to know what happened and who did what to whom and when it happened and how it happened, it's in the record. You just have to dig it out.
Right. Which leads me to I had Tom Avidable on the show last week. He has a new book coming out. It's a thriller revolving around the Kennedy assassination, and he actually has a new theory that the bullet that hit Kennedy in the neck, the front of the neck, was actually a ricochet against the bullet ricocheted against the dash, because there's a dent, a noticeable dent in the dash.
Yeah.
There was much more metal in the cars back then than there were.
Oh yeah.
Now they're all plastic, of course. It ricocheted and like almost like a pool ball, like
Yeah.
the cue ball ricochet at a certain angle and hit him in the neck. And because when the car was cleaned, they found a piece of shattered bullet there next to Jackie's purse.
Yeah, you want my opinion on that? I don't buy it.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough one to believe.
If you look at the reports from the Parkland doctors, they all described everyone who saw it described it as a small wound of entry, perfectly circular wound of entry.
Came from the front.
Coming from the front. They all described it as an entry wound or coming from the front. And the tissue was going in, not out. And it was about bullet size hole. So yeah, it's I can understand how we would come up with that, but I don't buy it.
Yeah, it's thus he's writing a fiction, but it is kind of interesting just to come up with something like that.
Oh yeah, that's part of the fun of writing fiction.
Yeah, it's creative. But I'm going to ask you a question I asked him. This is fascinating. And I'm glad you wrote these books about it because I definitely want to check them out. And again, I suggest the audience check them out. Now, I asked Tom, I said, okay, so the records are all supposed to be released. Everybody's dead, basically. Trump refused to release them all, which I thought if any president would, he would. Yeah. And of course, Biden hasn't released them all, whatever. And I guess Rudy Giuliani called Trump and he just said, like, why aren't you releasing all the Kennedy stuff? I mean, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be you. And I guess Trump's response was like, he was just like, Rudy, if you saw what I saw, you wouldn't release it either. Now, what's that mean? Like, is there like another film that the CIA puts together, and as soon as you're president, they grab hold of an hour's worth of your time and they just say, look at, if you get out of line, you don't feed our industrial complex or whatever they say, whatever their motives are. They're like, this too could happen to you, and or are there documents in there that like, these are the hits we've performed over the years and the hits can keep on coming. And there's no, I don't, like, what does it mean?
Yeah. I suspect, and again, this is just personal opinion. I expect there's a meeting, there's a, come to Jesus meeting.
Right.
Very, very brief. But if you notice, a lot of the presidents running for office have all promised, I'll release all the records. And
they all have.
Soon as they get into office, well, we'll let some of these go, but I've got to hold some of these back.
Right.
So yeah, who's really running the country?
That's right. And I think even Putin said, like, soon as we have an American president, soon as he gets into, settles himself in this swivel chair in the Oval Office, there's a knock on the door. Several suited men come in. They explain to him what the program is, and that he has to follow he or she will have to follow the program, or else, is the way I understand it.
Yeah, again, that's personal opinion, but I think there's a little meeting with all of this is yours. Do with it as you want to. This over here, you can't look.
You can't look. Do you believe, however, that they have other evidence of the Kennedy assassination? Like, what would they not want to reveal at this point? That's what I'm trying to get a grasp of. What would they not want to reveal?
There's a lot of evidence that's being withheld. In fact, there are a couple of lawsuits going on now about the CIA efforts in New Orleans when Oswald was there. I suspect there's a lot of connections. I suspect there's a lot of Lee Harvey Oswald information in there that totally contradicts the official story.
Right.
That would be my suspicion. But you got to understand from the government position, if they were to come out right now and say, well, this is what really happened, they've got to explain why the FBI lied to the American people, why the CIA lied to the American people, why the House and the Senate lied to the American people, why all the presidents have lied to the American people. They're kind of in a trap where they've got to keep their story straight, even though nobody believes the story.
I get the feeling that Trump feared for his life when he was exposed to this stuff. Like he considered it not just like, well, I can't release it. There's just too much information. It would, again, speculation. It would implicate the Bushes. It would implicate these people. It would implicate these people, the Fords, whoever is left in their family. That's one thing. But I got the feeling that he was really shaken up by what he saw and what he witnessed, and even felt as though it was a potential threat on his life. So I'm just trying to understand, like, what could be out there other than an unveiled threat. Like if you mess with the industrial complex, military industrial complex, if you mess with the Central Intelligence Agency and what we're involved in, you're going to die. We'll figure out a way. Like maybe, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we're speculating here, but I would imagine that the threat wouldn't even have to be verbalized.
Right.
Yeah, I think they would probably lay out a certain scenario, and you wouldn't have to say a threat.
Right.
That's my speculation.
I mean, even if, like, now I'm using my fiction mind here, even if they just laid out like 8x10s on the desk real quick, someone opens their briefcase, lays out these 8x10s, and just 3 different angles of shooters. And like, is there anything else you'd like to know, Mr. President?
Yeah, there probably something like that would do it. Like,
Yeah, this is what we're capable of, and that's what we were capable of then. So imagine what we're capable of now.
Yeah, one of the reasons, again, in my little presentations, if you wanted to kill the president, if that was your goal, you put a little drop into his daiquiri.
Yeah.
And he dies of a massive heart attack. There's no track record. There's no evidence. It doesn't show up. The guy who delivers the daiquiri doesn't even have to know that he's delivering the poison. Why would you go to the trouble of arranging multiple shooters in a public place, which requires timing, payroll, weapon shipments, practice, radios, safe houses, evacuation and escape, a money trail, and in the case of Dealey Plaza, hundreds of eyewitnesses who automatically and immediately contradict the official theory. Again, this is my opinion. I think this is just an example of it was so public because it's an example of this is what we can do and we can get away with it.
Right.
There's no other reason to have a public execution like that if the goal is just to kill the president.
That's so smart. That is so smart because that is just something that is so in your face.
Exactly.
They wanted the world to see this. They
exactly.
This was a message.
It was a message to the world and a message to anybody investigating from there on.
Right.
Yeah.
And probably the same with Martin Luther King and with Bobby Kennedy as well, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Those are very public executions. But I was shaken to the core. And again, this is not a political program by any means. I'm just mentioning people because this is what happened. But I believe one of our New York State senators was, or one of our congressmen from New York State, rather, I should say, was talking about the upcoming election and referring to Mr. Trump. And he was just saying, like, we have to stop him at all costs. Basically, paraphrasing now. This was Goodman, I believe his name is, something like that. Young man. And he finishes off his statement, his rant almost. Really, it was a rant by saying he must be eliminated. Now, you could tell the second he said that, like his eyes went like a deer in the headlight. Like, I should not have used that verbiage. I don't know why I did it, but it's almost like, I'm about to be demonetized now, but I don't care. But it's almost like someone's saying something or there's like a scuttlebutt or whatever, they're just trying to weigh their options. And if I were him, I'd fear for my life. I really would at this point.
Well,
Nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the case of the JFK killing, I'm just speculating here, but I think at some point there was a group of very powerful people sitting around the table, just a bitch session, and somebody said, we ought to just kill the son of a bitch. And somewhere that two guys looked at each other, and there was a slight nod, and I think that's how it got started. Yeah, let's just kill the son of a bitch.
Yep. I've also heard regarding JFK that someone actually even said, well, it's already in the works.
Yeah, there was a lot of people told Kennedy not to go to Dallas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was there had been a plot previously in Chicago, right?
There was a plot in Chicago, also in Fort Lauderdale, also in Miami, all on the same trip.
Right.
The November 22nd trip was part of a tour. And so there were arrests made in Chicago. There were threats that were recorded in Miami, where one of the FBI was recording a white supremacist, and he said, "Yeah, Kennedy's going to be shot in the South from a tall building, a high-powered rifle, and they'll pick up somebody to take the blame for it after it's over with."
Wow. Well, you can't get more specific than that.
And that was
not naming names.
Yeah. But that's part of the record, and it was recorded by the FBI. This is before Dallas.
Right. And to come all the way around, Ruby acted not out of emotion, but on mandate.
That's my thinking. Yeah, because I've never seen any indication that he was upset about Kennedy dying, or that, as he said, he didn't want Jackie to come back for the trial. I don't believe that at all.
No, that was bullshit. Yeah.
And in fact, I think he was ordered to do it. In fact, if there was a warning that was phoned into the Dallas Police Department the morning Oswald was shot, saying, "We are going to kill him," one of the policemen, I cannot remember his name, but this is part of the record, said, "I know that voice. I know that voice." After Ruby killed Oswald, the guy said, "It was Ruby. Jack called warning us about the transfer." So I think he was ordered to do it. I don't think he really wanted to do it.
But he had to do it.
But what are you going to do?
There's a film that exists, which I've seen 100 times, and you've probably seen it 1,000 times, where Jack Ruby's talking from his cell, and he's saying, eventually this is all going to come out, basically. He alludes to the fact that I could be dreaming this, but I think he alludes to the fact that he's dying anyway, but eventually the reason for all this will come out, the truth will come out. So he says it right there, like, this is not what you see. Don't believe what you see. This was something completely different.
Yeah, the Earl Warren, it might have been Jerry Ford also, but the two guys who were investigating Ruby were prohibited from interviewing Ruby. Warren came down and interviewed him, and the transcript is available. Ruby begs to be taken out of Dallas. He keeps saying, "Yeah, I can't tell the truth here. Get me out of Dallas. Get me to Washington so I can tell you the truth." And they refused to do it.
You would think they would want to debrief him for hours and hours and hours.
And you would think the guys who were investigating Ruby would be allowed to do the investigating, but they were prohibited.
They were prohibited from doing it, just like the autopsy and all that sort of stuff. Listen, I've kept you far too long.
Hey, it's been great.
But this is just fascinating. I got to have you back because there's other questions I have for you.
Love to. Yeah, we can talk about writing even.
Yeah, we'll get to that eventually. We'll get to that event. We haven't even.
We can talk about ghost hunting, whatever floats your boat.
Okay, good. That's what the purpose of this channel. It says the writer's life, but I'm interested in the person and what they do besides click the keys. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you obviously are leading and have led a very fascinating life. And I want to pick your brain a little bit more down the road. Do. All right, love great. It. And I appreciate you giving us your time. Now, Dan, where can everybody find you? Where do you want them to go to find your books, especially these Ruby books, which I'm going to pick up and put on my to-be read list?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, all my books are available, from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, the Kindle, the usual sources. They're all there. if they want to get in touch with me, I have a free writing blog at www.fournightspress.com. That's FOURKNIGHTS, fournightspress.com. I post a short story at www.danbaldwin.com. And that's just a free short story or a poem or something. If they want to contact me, it's just Baldco, BALDCO at MSN.com.
Excellent. Dan, I certainly appreciate it. I'm sorry to break into your holiday weekend, but this is more fun than anything else.
Oh yeah, love it.
And I look forward to talking to you again, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Can't wait to read your stuff, brother. And for everybody else out there, don't forget, ciao, ciao.